Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 136, A Timeless Story. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. Welcome back to the Stories Told podcast. I'm author E.W. Barnes, and with me is author Michael Grayford. And today we're diving into the story told in the movie Back to the Future. Speaking of Back to the Future, the last time we did this podcast was last year, and now we have jumped ahead to the future.
We're back.
And we're back. This took a little longer to get back than we thought it would. I had a major family emergency regarding water, where water shouldn't be in a residential construction, which has resulted in many weeks of cleanup and deconstruction and soon reconstruction. And I'm just grateful to say that all the people that we've worked with to help with this little crisis have been outstanding, which has been a real blessing.
Yeah, that's good.
Has taken time and chewed up energy and mental attention and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, water intrusion and water damage is no joke.
No, it's not. So what's going on with you? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Moved again to a new place.
Okay.
Seems to be a yearly thing now. So that ate up a lot of time. I'm finally getting settled into a new place. Still have a few little things to do, but for the most part, set up and ready to go. Looking forward to the new year, getting back into writing because I pretty much paused that, over the holidays and with the move and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully in February, my brain will be locked in again to start working on writing stuff.
Good for you. Believe it or not, I actually have gotten some writing stuff done, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, excellent.
I have started sort of reassessing, the long-time listeners will know that I am working on a 5-novel space opera series called The Adventures of the Empyrean Guard. And the novel titles are Apsis, Ecliptic, Meridian, Umbra, and Zenith. And so Apsis and Ecliptic are completed. Those novels are completed. Meridian is about 75% of the way through. But I've been away from the universe for so long, I really needed to jump back in. So I've been going back in, sort of just refining Apsis, doing a more polishing as I'm reading it so that I'm refamiliarizing myself with the universe. I'll do that with both the books, then get into Meridian and finish that. And then jump into Umbra. And my goal is to I'm going to have these books finished. We talked last year, several weeks ago, we talked about how I think I'm going to be going to a writers' conference in Las Vegas this year. And there is the opportunity, I haven't decided if I'm going to do it or not, but there is the opportunity to sell books at this event. And so if I choose to do that, I would really love to have this series finished so that I can
That's right.
sell these books in addition to the time travel series that I have. So I've kind of had to lay out a time frame for myself. How long am I going to spend on this book? How long am I going to spend on this book? How long am I going to spend on this book? And then, jump into the next 2 books and get them done. So fingers crossed. And of course, best laid plans.
Yeah. Well, I think you can do it.
Yep. Going to do my best. Have you encountered any interesting stories in books, movies, or television over the last several weeks?
Yeah, since we last spoke, I read a couple of Arthur C. Clarke books, The City and the Stars and Childhood's End.
Uh-huh.
And I think what I learned from that is I'm not too into sci-fi for the sake of sci-fi anymore.
Yeah.
I want something that's more character focused rather than here's an idea and let's sort of broadly play that out from an omniscient point of view kind of thing. I like more deep POV, character struggles, seeing, what the character's doing, how they're thinking, that kind of story. I love it in a science fiction universe. I love it in a fantasy universe or many other types of stories, as we've discussed on this show. But just sort of pure sci-fi like this, that's sort of abstract in a way,
Yeah.
doesn't appeal to me as much. They weren't bad. I mean, Arthur C. Clarke is a good writer, obviously. I think I would have enjoyed them more when I was younger than now. They're interesting reads. There's good thought there, and there's good stuff to take from them, but they just didn't compel me as much as I would have liked. Interesting stories, but they weren't great stories for me. Yeah. What about you? Find anything cool?
I have been reading the Stormlight Archive, the last book of the Stormlight Archive. Excuse me, I should say the book 5 of the first half of the 10-book series that won't be completed for another 5 years. And I am almost finished with this 5th book. I would say I probably have 20 more pages to go. So maybe this week, maybe next week, I'll have it finished.
Done.
Yeah, pretty much done. And it's been very interesting to read it from the standpoint of as an author. Very interesting to read it as from the perspective of a consumer of entertainment. Interesting to read it from the perspective of knowing that there's more to come, and sort of analyzing. But that sounds like such a cold work. But just sort of recognizing the choices that Brandon Sanderson has made in his narrative and in the plot. It's been really an interesting read from all those perspectives.
What was your overall feel like? Because I've heard mixed reviews on that last book there.
I am holding my feelings until I get to the end.
Okay.
I want to see what he does and then sort of decide. At first, I sort of was having opinions when I was about halfway through, and I was like, you know what? I don't know how he's going to end this, so I'm going to wait.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't end on a cliffhanger that takes 5 years to resolve.
As I understand it wouldn't be the first time for a lot of authors who cliffhang their books and then take a long time to finish. And I know that's frustrating for readers, but it's also, I've recognized that sometimes it's really hard to sometimes come up with the absolute perfect ending. I haven't watched too much in the way of television or movies over the last few weeks, doing a lot of comfort watching, and I've discovered All Creatures Great and Small on PBS, which is like quintessential comfort watching. So that's been awesome.
Cool.
Not much in the way of fantasy or science fiction, but you and I have been talking. We've got a really interesting podcast calendar coming up for the next few months. There is, I'm really excited about Project Hail Mary coming out in March. There's a new Star Trek series that we're going to talk about when the series is finished. We'll talk about the series as a whole. Bunch of fun stuff coming up. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too.
Are you ready to talk about Back to the Future?
Let's do it.
Okay. Today we're talking about the story told in the 1985 movie Back to the Future. And here is the summary that comes up when you type in Back to the Future on Google. In this 1980s sci-fi classic, small-town California teen Marty McFly is thrown back into the 50s when an experiment by his eccentric scientist friend Doc Brown goes awry. Traveling through time in a modified DeLorean car, Marty encounters young versions of his parents and must make sure that they fall in love or he'll cease to exist. Even more dauntingly, Marty has to return to his own time and save the life of Doc Brown. Did you enjoy this movie?
Yeah, I love this movie. I'm surprised we haven't discussed this before, so I'm glad we finally got around to it. This is one of those movies where people say it has a perfect script, and I don't know about perfect, everything's subjective, but it's definitely a really, really well done script, I think. Just from the opening moments where we see Marty going into Doc Brown's house, we see all the clocks that are going, showing that he's obsessed with time. And we learn all these little things. We see the dog's gone, that he obviously hasn't been home for a long time. We even see a guy hanging from one of the clock hands, which foreshadows what's going to happen later in the movie. We see Marty play his guitar. We see that Doc was, he's obviously an inventor. He maybe plays a little bit loose with safety. We learn that plutonium was stolen, and then we later see that it's under his bed. We learn the time period, that it's October 1985. And then when the huge speaker blows Marty backwards, it sets the tone for what's coming so perfectly. So I think it starts off with a bang. It really gets you into it. And the first time you're watching it, you're just kind of panning around looking at what's going on in the house. You don't necessarily know that all this stuff is connected, but it's sending you messages very smoothly so that, it's not slapping you over the head with it. You're absorbing the information and the setup for the story. And it's just really well done. And then we introduce some of the characters, which we get to see, just get to the heart of who they are really fast. Like we see Mayor Goldie Wilson driving by. We see the principal talking about how no McFly has ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley. we get to the core of these characters really fast. Yeah, that's all fun and fast. Like you learn so much information so quickly, but it doesn't feel like you're being inundated or being flooded with exposition or anything like that. It's done really smoothly and accessibly. So yeah, I think the setup for the story is great. And once it gets going, it's fantastic. We learn that Marty is, he's this guitar player, but then he's like, Mom, maybe I'm not cut out for music. So we learn kind of the trajectory he needs to go internally to sort of have confidence in himself. And then things like Jennifer writing her grandmother's number, she's going to be staying with her grandmother, on the flyer about the clock tower, which gives Marty a reason to save that flyer. All these little things that are done in service of what's to come that feel natural as you're watching it. It doesn't feel forced. Like, oh yeah, she's just writing a number there. And that's obviously why he would save it. So like everything happens later was set up earlier. And it's a very cause and effect driven movie, a very setup and payoff driven movie. But it doesn't feel forced. It's just so well done. And then there's callbacks and references once he goes back in time to things that are happening in his time, like with the clock tower, obviously, and when he meets his mother and he sees his Uncle Joey in the crib and says, better get used to these bars, kid. Just all these little references to things that are going to happen later. It's just so good. Yeah, everything happens for a reason that we've seen earlier. Even later in the movie when the guitarist for the band at the dance, the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, he cuts his hand trying to jimmy open the trunk of the car, which then gives Marty a reason to play on stage, which lets him save himself by getting his parents together. Like everything just flows from one moment to the next, and it has a reason for being there. So yeah, it may not be a perfect script, but it's darn close. Another thing I really loved, because this is unusual, I think, in a lot of stories, is there are multiple climactic moments here. Right? When he gets to the end, he has to, obviously, he's trying to get his parents together. He's trying to get back to the future. He's got his own internal journey that he's going on. So when George hits Biff to save Lorraine in the car, right? That's its own little climactic moment where we see the transformation of George's character, right? Of Marty's father's character. So Marty kind of got him into that position, and we see that payoff there, and it's very satisfying. And then when Marty plays on stage, he sort of satisfies his own internal journey. He's been wanting to play in front of an audience, but there's a bit of a confidence issue where, he doesn't know if he's been cut out for it. But we get to see that pay off. And it's not at the same moment, right? There's one and there's the other. And then, of course, when Marty and Doc manage the whole lightning strike situation to send him back to the future, that satisfies the external story element of getting him home. And those things happen in succession. And a lot of times in stories, they all happen at once, right? You're presented with the character's internal growth happening sort of at the same moment or near the same moment as the culmination of the external story, right? They have to do something externally. And in order to do that, we get to see them have a moment of growth or inspiration that solves that problem. But here we get them kind of one and then another and another. And I very rarely see that. And it just works so well in this movie. It's like there's just these the final payoffs to these three different things that are going on. And it's like each of them is so exciting and so satisfying. It just makes for, in my opinion, just makes for a really great ending. And then even when there's sort of the falling action and resolution, he comes back and he's trying to, he's trying to save Doc, and then he's back in his new world, and then Doc comes back again. It's like, there's just a lot happening that is just built up to so well and is so rewarding for me anyway. Yeah, I could go on, but sort of the high level thoughts I have. I really enjoy this movie, and I'm glad we get to discuss it.
I too love this movie. And of course, I write time travel, so I enjoy time travel movies very much. And one of the things that I especially love about this movie and about this story and how this story was crafted is it goes to what you were talking about, the perfection of the script, the perfection of the story. I call this a closed universe story. Everything in this story relates to everything else. Like you pointed out, there is nothing extraneous, nothing external. It is all connected to itself. So if you have, if you imagine it as a circle, right? And if you pick something in the story, like it's at one point of the circle, there's going to be, you can draw a straight line to where that is reflected in another part of the story on the other side of the circle, if that makes sense. Probably a visual that only I've got, but
Yeah.
And there is nothing in this story that is not connected to something else. Every single decision that was made in how the story was told and what was shown is connected to something else. And it's just brilliantly done. And when you were talking about like all the clocks at the beginning and all the references that come back and it's setting up the story, to me, that's like the movie version of the show Don't Tell.
Yes.
They're not telling you anything. They're just showing you. And in movies, you can do it visually. And of course, in a story, you've got to do it a little bit differently so that it feels organic and doesn't feel like an info dump. But that's what that was at the very beginning. And I've seen this movie, I don't know how many times, and I still catch stuff.
Yeah.
I caught something, this last watch that I hadn't seen before. And that's, to me, that level of detail and immersion in this universe is extraordinary. And, again, I do think it's one of the greatest examples of this kind of setups and payoffs, like you said. It's up there with The Mummy, which is another one of those really well set up and really well paid off stories. What else have we talked about that's been brilliantly set up and paid off?
There's a lot. There's a lot that
there are several.
Well, this might be one of the best.
Yeah, agreed. I love how the characters are well developed in a very short amount of time. It's very precise the way the characters are developed, what we learn about them right away, and what their needs are, and what their goals are, but it's done in such a very precise fashion that you don't even realize that that's what's happening. It's just, here's people, and they're going along their lives. But if you sit down and say, okay, what do they need? You know within 30 seconds what's going on with every single one of them. Yeah,
and it's fun. They don't take it too seriously, right? They're a bit extremified. Everything's a little bit exaggerated, but that's what makes it so enjoyable to watch.
Exactly. I agree. I also love, as you pointed out, the sort of parallel stories that you've got with George and his son and their own challenges.
Yeah.
They're very paralleled with each other, and that's made very clear. You don't have to guess. It's very clear what's going on there. And it's just beautifully done on how they help each other. It seems clear what Marty has to do to help George, but George helps Marty too, because Marty has to take risks in order to be able to push George to take risks.
Yes.
And it works beautifully, like you pointed out, absolutely beautifully. So we love this movie, but is there anything you might have changed as a writer?
Yeah, this is another one of those movies where it's hard to criticize something that's at this level, but maybe there are a couple things I would change. I might make the beginning of Marty's internal journey a little bit clearer at the start, a little bit more not impactful, but a little stronger. Maybe when he's going to play his guitar, with the band in front of the judges at the beginning, show him being a little bit more hesitant or nervous.
Yeah.
So it's like we see that it's like he wants to do it, but there's a struggle within him.
Yeah.
As it is, he just kind of goes on and plays. So I don't really get that. And then I don't get that he has that internal struggle until afterward when he's talking with Jennifer. He says, maybe I'm not cut out for music or something like that. So that's when we first get it. But it's just that one little bit. Is that necessary? No. I mean, it's, it's there's so much going on in the script, and I think you kind of get it. But I would like to put a little bit more in there. And then the same thing again at the end when he has to play on stage, have him be a little hesitant and then realize, well, I have to do this. And then he steps up because again, he just goes and plays. So for me, those are the things that I would make that a little bit stronger, just so we see his internal journey a little bit more, and we can root for him just that little bit more when he has to go on the stage at the end and he does it and he steps up. It would make that a little bit more powerful, I think. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there's little things, with time travel-y stuff and stuff like that. That's like, okay, it's hard to deal with those things, but it's just so much fun stuff. Just and kudos to all the people involved making this movie. The acting and the directing and the music and everything was just so spot on. So anyway, what would I change? It would be those two things. That's it. Is there anything you would change?
Yeah, actually, it's funny watching this now through the lens of what is this, 40 years later?
Yeah.
Biff's attack on Lorraine is unpleasant. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He's essentially assaulting her. And so through the lens of 40 years later and the understanding that we as a society now have about trauma and about assault, I think that if I were writing this now, I would like to have Lorraine's younger brother not be in jail, but Biff be in jail instead at the end. That's, I think, the one thing I would have changed to sort of demonstrate the seriousness of his behavior.
Oh, yeah. That's not a bad idea. I like that.
And so then have Joey not be in jail anymore. Joey have a good life. Somehow the changes that took place, George was a good influence. The new Lorraine was a good influence, something that Joey wasn't in jail anymore, but Biff was. I
like that a lot, actually, because I was thinking afterwards, like, I kind of wanted to hear like what happened with Joey. Was he still in jail, or did this affect him as well?
Yeah. Now, is this a really big issue? No, not at all. It's a tiny, teeny thing. That's the story does just fine without it. Just as a writer myself, that's something that I might have done differently for me. But is that something that's needed in a story? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree with you though. I think that would be good.
And, like you, there's the time travel issues. The time travel I write is not go back in time and change things and then it ripples to the future. That I write parallel timeline kind of time travel. Okay. So you can't change the time. You can't change what's happened time travel. That's not the time travel I write because it's tricky, right? If things changed in Marty's life from the very beginning, he wouldn't be the same Marty.
Right.
But that's okay, because for this story and the way this story was written and the way that the time travel was approached, which I think is a very personal choice, time travel stories work in both regards, I think. I think it's a great story. And the outcome that happens when Marty wakes up and his parents have a brand new life and they're much happier and things are better for them is an absolutely delightful and satisfying payoff. So there's no complaints at all. It is so satisfying. So how about themes? What themes did you pull from this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit on it as we were talking about it, about, believing in yourself, taking risks, taking chances, putting yourself out there to succeed. Yeah, you have to be willing to take a chance on yourself, believe in yourself. And in this case, in particular, in your creative endeavors, because both he and his father were doing that, right? Him with his music and his father with his writing. And we see that theme presented in their transformation. So that's what I got.
And I got those things as well. And also kind of landed on fighting for what's important, because the critical point for both of them was when George fought for Lorraine, faced his fears and hit Biff. And when Marty fought for Doc to stop him from dying. He even though Doc kept saying, I can't know the future, that if I know the future, what could happen to me, what's happening to you could happen to me, I could cease to exist. You see how important it is. And yet Marty decided, despite the temporal danger to fight for Doc anyway. And so to me, that was another theme that came out. So as a writer, what do you take away from Back to the Future?
Well, again, as we've hit on already here, and we've said this many times before, perhaps no film does foreshadowing and setups and payoffs better. It's just set up so well. But for me, I think the one I'm going to go with, because it's more unique to this, is having your internal and external culminations, your climaxes, not occur simultaneously. You can separate those out and the story can still work wonderfully, as this exemplifies. So that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, that's a good one. And for me, it came down to all the attention to detail. And the attention to detail is so in the weeds in this movie. I mean, every single little, practically microbe has been thought about and how it impacts the story. And I just love that. So that's my takeaway. It's just, the incredible value of that attention to detail.
Yeah. It's kind of a side thought, but that makes me think of another thing that makes this movie work. And this is important perhaps from a filmmaking perspective. Like you can write a great script, but the casting and the performances are so important. Like, I don't know if anyone else could have made this movie as successful as those two main actors did. Christopher Lloyd, he was Doc Brown. Like, I don't think anyone else could have been that guy. He was so good. His facial expressions, his sounds, his talking to himself. And we know, they had another actor for Marty McFly, and it wasn't working out. So they got Michael J. Fox in. So it just shows the importance of, you can have the greatest script, but for a movie or TV show, it's like you have to have the crew involved that's going to make it great too.
Yep, indeed. Thank you for joining us as we talked about the movie Back to the Future. Huge thanks to our Patreon supporters and all our listeners. And if you like behind-the-scenes craft notes and what's coming next, you can subscribe to our newsletters. Find the link to Mike's newsletter on michaelgrayford.com. And you can get a free story by signing up for my newsletter. And both of those links are in the show notes. The Stories Told podcast is on all major platforms. Please like, subscribe, or follow to help us reach more story lovers like you. For book, TV, or movie suggestions, subscribers can drop a note on our YouTube channel. Our next podcast will be not next week, but the week after, so there will be a 1-week gap. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the 1987 movie, The Running Man. Thanks so much, Mike. This was a lot of fun.
This was great. Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on the Stories Told podcast.